You are listening to the IoT For All Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IoT For All podcast on the IoT For All Media Network. I'm your host, Ryan Chacon, one of the co-creators of IoT For All. Now, before we jump into this episode, please don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or join our newsletter at iotforall.com/newsletter to catch all the newest episodes as soon as they come out. Before we get started, does your business waste hours searching for assets like equipment or vehicles and pay full-time employees just to manually enter location and status data? You can get real-time location and status updates for assets indoors and outdoors at the lowest cost possible with Leverage's end-to-end IoT solutions. To learn more, go to iotchangeseverything.com. That's iotchangeseverything.com. So, without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the IoT For All podcast. All right, welcome, Yadia, to the IoT For All podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Not too bad. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. This will be a great conversation.
Same. Looking forward to it.
Let's start off by having you give a quick introduction about yourself to our audience. So any background information, any history, kind of how you ended up where you are now, just anything you think would be relevant and interesting for our audience to learn more about you.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Yadia. I'm originally from Honduras. I moved to Taiwan 12 years ago. I've been doing IoT for 6 years. Originally started as an R&D engineer, moved up and co-founded my own company focusing on IoT for sustainability, climate change. We wanted to focus on cold chain. Then I met the amazing team at UnaBiz's, and I couldn't help myself but want to join something that we're doing, Massive IoT. We're focusing on doing things at a larger scale and making things like very simple and very closely to what people want to do in terms of technology.
Awesome. So let's talk more about UnaBiz for a second. Just give our audience a quick overview of kind of what you all are doing, kind of the role you play in IoT, what your offering is to the market, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So at UnaBiz, we focus on creating a massive IoT. Our philosophy is like connecting people with simple technology. We want to make it easy for people to understand it. We want to solve problems with this technology. We want to unite with technology and create an impact at a massive scale to help every person, every organization on a planet to live simple and live smarter. What we do is we're able to solve whatever problem you may be having and solve that through IoT. That being like, you need to be able to track some kegs. We're able to design from zero all the way to like an end total solution, the device, the design manufacturing, the middleware platform, even. We might help you and give you some tips on what should like your end platform look like.
Very cool. So when you mentioned a second ago, massive IoT, can you talk to our audience a little bit more about what that actually means? It's a relatively, at least from my side, I've started to see it used more lately. And I've, kind of heard it a bit more often than I've ever heard it before. So when you all talk about massive IoT, what do you mean by that exactly?
So we have to first start off looking at IoT by itself. When we first talk about IoT, everybody wants to do a proof of concept or a POC. But many projects which start with IoT, it end up in what it is, the POC graveyard. You don't see many projects actually being live and used and actually sold and functioning in the real world. At UnaBiz, we're very proud to have almost over 1 million devices connected, actively functioning and actively being used by our customers in Asia Pacific, Latin America, and Europe. So here we talk about customers have customers with 50K devices, 850K devices in different regions around the world. So we're talking about the quantity that it takes to deploy and have an active project. And with that, it comes its own challenges,
Right. Absolutely. So let's talk about some deployments and things you have in the field, where all those devices, what they're all being used for right now. So if you want to share, if you wouldn't mind, any use cases or applications of the technology kind of out in the market and right now that you feel comfortable sharing. You don't have to give any company names or partner names if you don't want to, but just kind of the application of the technology so that the use cases can be explored a little bit more.
So one of my favorite use cases has been like in Japan, we have this gas metering project, but it's just way more than just gas metering. We're focusing on being able to provide an efficient way to monitoring these gas pipes that it's all deployed all around Japan. We're talking about Tokyo, we're talking about Fukuoka, and we're able to give them a more efficient way of monitoring this, be able to reduce the carbon emissions, because we're reducing having to have people to manually go check on of these rooftops what is the current gas usage that you're having, and also be able to give them a preventive form in the case where we're having earthquakes. You can immediately remove it, shut off those gas meters to make it safe for people. What I love about this is that we're able to use and leverage different radio frequencies to solve our customers' problems, because as you know, IoT, there is no single network that could be able to be used for all types of use cases. So here we leverage the Sigfox network and also the LTE network to have a wide mass deployment and be able to deploy over 900K units just in Japan.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Well, congrats on all of that. It sounds like a lot of great things going on your end for sure.
Yes, thank you so much.
So when let's expand on the massive IoT point for a second. You mentioned also the focus on the middleware component of IoT, which is actually not something we talk a lot about. So I think it'd be good if you want to if you would mind mentioning kind of what middleware actually is for those who may not understand what the middleware component is for IoT, and then how it plays a role in kind of the success of massive IoT.
Yeah, sure. So when we define middleware, it's more of like that software layer that sits right in between when you have the device and what you have as your end application, that being a visualization dashboard, maybe a Google Sheets. That's what we have. We sit right in the middle for it. What we saw when we were building this massive deals and cases is that when you have thousands of devices, you cannot use those traditional platforms, which is just like I add my devices and I'm trying to send the data through this. There comes a lot of complications with it. Like, what if I want to have a heterogeneous fleet of devices? Oh, there's different radio frequencies. There's different firmware that I need to manage. What about my configuration of your devices? Like, you might want to configure it on a more granular level. And of course, when it comes to like the business continuity, like, the core of IT itself, it's like, how do I ensure that all the data that I'm getting, I maintain it alive? And if anything happens on the end point, if there's any crashes, any maintenance that I need to know, how do I push the data and to be able to ensure my data pipeline is running 24/7? We saw that as like something that it needed to be solved. And we thought like, hey, you know what? We're pretty good at doing massive IoT and we see this need in the market for it. We believe that we have the experience and knowledge to be able to do something that could be adopted by our market. And right now, this is something we're currently having a lot of customers adopt.
That's fantastic. And when you're working with customers, kind of what is the general approach you all take to helping ensure success with a massive IoT deployment? So, if we can talk all the way through the early stages of conversation, all the way to scale, where are the key points along the way, and what kind of advice and tips do you have for those out there better trying to get an understanding of how to be successful when they're kind of approaching a massive IoT deployment?
So one of the things that we look for, and we always ask our customers, is what is the problem that you're trying to solve? We ask a lot of whys. Because by understanding what are their pain points, we're able to understand what will be those things that they're looking forward to have in the solution which they're having. Sometimes it may be as easy as I need something which I can just put it on a keg and within 2 minutes I can move to my next keg. Those little things of like, how fast do I need to maintain this? Because some people, they may not be the ones deploying these devices. They actually hire third-party providers for this. Other times it's like, I need to have a constant data stream and be able to control what's happening with my device. And then we have to think about the approach of what is the radio frequencies we want to use that would allow us to do that. And a lot of these cases, we also ask our customers, when you have the device, what will be the operations which you do? Like, you will put the device, what will be the next steps? What happens inside your company? What happens inside your company? And then we start iterating quite a lot in terms of like, what would the shape of the device would look like? How do we adapt it to whatever asset that we're trying to solve? And of course, any device behavior and configuration that will help solve any problems that our customers ensure. Overall, we try to go above and beyond to think about more than just what the customer is asking. And of course, we think about is that our philosophy is less is more. It doesn't have to be like an overcomplicated solution to be able to solve the problem that customers have.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention because there are so many different options when it comes to building an IoT solution. And sometimes it can be very overwhelming for companies that are not really clear on how IoT works, how the different connectivity options work, how different hardware works, to the point where it just is overwhelming and they just kind of shy away from adopting IoT. So being able to kind of approach it from the less is more kind of mindset, I think pays off very well for companies when they're looking to find the right fit. So when you talk with companies and you kind of have these conversations, is there a common ROI that companies are looking to reach or usually looking to kind of measure success around when you all work with them?
I think this is like a very interesting point. I think one of them would be like in terms of like how can we help improve their productivity, right? Like how can this product make them be more efficient than they previously were? Because usually the customers that we get, they're ready to know what they want to achieve. They have a clear problem they want to solve. Another thing is when it comes to costs. Some customers are very cost sensitive. So we have to keep that in mind in terms of like how are we able to maximize by give them, maybe it doesn't need to be a super complicated solution, but a very efficient solution. Here where we come in, where we build a custom designed IoT solution. We don't do like off-the-shelf solutions because it won't really achieve their ROI in terms of what they're looking for. And then, of course, a lot of customers we have, they might want to be looking for, can our solution that we're providing help them create new revenue sources? We have some customers where they see this solution, so like, hey, actually, I could start reselling this to my customers and I could start working in different ways or expand to different markets.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And how do you all approach kind of the partner side of things? Like, bringing a full scale, even custom solution at times is not always the easiest thing for an organization to do themselves. So how do you approach working with partners and kind of the overall, this philosophy that the IoT ecosystem is very partnership driven?
I think when we have to look about historically what us at UnaBiz have been doing. We first started with the Sigfox ecosystem. UnaBiz ourselves, we are Singapore and Taiwan Sigfox operators. So we have established very good relationship with partners all across the 72 countries in the world. This has shown us and helped us understand that across different countries, people have different needs that need to be met. And like I said, these also adapts to like what are the challenges and what are the things they're looking for when they want to adopt IoT.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And now I want to talk about the other side that we've talked about, the successful deployments and how they work and kind of your advice on that side. But what about when it comes to challenges? What kind of challenges have you seen with the massive IoT deployments, just kind of across the board? Is there any area that kind of sticks out to you?
I think you'll be quite surprised, but you won't believe that many customers, when they think about IoT, sometimes they don't think about how am I going to install these thousands of devices onto the asset. And this all comes to what is my total cost of ownership? What is it going to add up once I'm installing this solution, right? Because the more you have to maintain, it comes to what am I going to spending on this device? I think, which this comes to like, how can we make the device as simple, as easy to adopt? One of the cases we have in for Japan use case, how we were able to deploy this device and make it very efficient, very fast. You use zip ties, then it can be installed in under 2 minutes. So what the installer needs to do, just put the zip ties on the gas pipe, you open an app, scan, and you're ready to go. It's installed. You're ensured that this pipe is running.
Yeah, so the ease of deployment side is probably one of the key factors that, if you can solve that, you can make adoption a bit more easy. We've seen that with people with, just Velcro, even like putting a sticky, one side of the Velcro on the device and then the other side on the asset and just attaching it and you're good to go. So I think the ease of deployment is definitely something that companies should focus on in order to help with the increase to help increase adoption.
Yeah, correct. And even like the speed of adoption is super important when we're doing massive IoT, right? We want to be able to ensure the more they adopt it, it's going to take them less time to have to invest in people, especially right now with COVID times where, like human resource capital, you cannot have thousands of people in one spot. You can have to segregate how you're putting people around the way.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And on the scalability side, have you run into any challenges with kind of any of the technologies in IoT kind of making it harder for certain types of use cases to scale?
So, well, like I said, our philosophy is a lot about less is more. So when we're working with less, you have a more faster data to be able to be pushed reliably. Right now, we're talking about 12 bytes of data. So, it's super easy to scale that up.
Right.
But having a system that is able to eat all the data and give you some, enrich the data and give it to our customer, that's where we champion in right now.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the last questions I had for you before we wrap up is around the pandemic. So I know where you're located and where I'm located, the pandemic, or coming out of the pandemic, has been a very different approach. We're probably seeing similar and also some different things happening in the industries that we work in as it relates to the effect the pandemic has had. But I'm curious from your side, how has the pandemic really affected Massive IoT and deployments that you're involved in, or maybe that you've just seen kind of either gets started, then stalled, and back to getting started again, hopefully soon. So, what have you seen as major changes kind of over the last year and a half?
I think one of the things we have seen that's impacted not just IoT, but the general cases that we're having here has been, at least here in Taiwan, we have seen about we're working with the Taiwan government for measuring water metering. Because, not just when we're having the pandemic, more people are at home, they're maybe consuming more water. And in Taiwan, we haven't had much rain, which is impacting how much water are we having for people. Another thing we have seen is that the type of use cases people are looking to solve, it's a little bit more driven for cost efficiency. And we have also some customers where, because they buy one of our big customers, they want to have more orders. But as the supply chains affected globally, there's like a component shortage happening. So even though we want to support it, we want to order, we might not be able to deliver because of the long lead time that's happening.
Yeah, it's been crazy to see. Do you feel like there's any new use cases that have been spawned up, or any, or I guess, where do you think the future or how do you think the future of IoT has been affected by the pandemic as well? Let's say, the chip shortage and all those kinds of things get solved. Do you feel like anything has kind of changed for maybe the better from the pandemic on your side? Have you guys seen anything like that?
I think right now we're seeing a lot of people getting more creative on what they're looking for. We have seen a lot of use cases increase in demand of facility management, especially a huge demand in Singapore and Japan for this. There's more care of what does the environment look like for people.
Sure.
When it comes to components by itself, I think people are starting to think of more of let's put less components inside and try to make this work more, which works perfectly aligns with what we do. We want to make this as simple as possible, but as powerful enough to be able to solve our customers' problems. Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's been very interesting because we've seen a kind of a new focus on the medical side, and then also in office buildings. So being able to track where people are and when they're coming and going, the occupancy of certain rooms, things that we knew about and people were doing, but it really wasn't a priority. But coming out of the pandemic over here, we've seen a huge shift in companies focusing on those things in order to get back to business as it was before. So I'm curious if you all sort of see that as well.
Absolutely. We have seen a lot of clients, and especially in Singapore, asking for them wanting to monitor indoor air quality for offices, all those facility buildings. We even have seen it in campuses where they need to know how is this air good for people? Because with COVID, you get a little bit more worried about people coughing, too many people in the room. How does this affect the environment for everybody? And ensuring that it's a safe environment has been seen as a top priority for those people who do those facility management cases.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm very interested to see kind of how things continue to change over time, especially regionally around the world, because we've all kind of rolled out of the pandemic in a very different manner, different regulations, different processes. And also some of us are kind of going backwards now. We're starting to explore putting, masks back on here, things like that. So I'm curious to see in the IoT space how it continues to be affected. And as we kind of grow out of it, what happens and what changes, and hopefully it's changes for the better, but I guess we'll kind of all see together.
Yeah, and I also feel like we're going to see a lot of cases in airports because people do want to travel, a lot of business, a lot of tourism, economies that truly depends on this. I can see airports being one of the hot spots for the next years to get that digital transformation going on.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think there and hospitals are going to be two big spaces for sure.
Oh, yeah. But, with hospitals, when it comes, there's a lot of regulations which you need to take care of.
Agreed. Yeah.
So there's a higher entry barrier for.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just generally, we were talking about a second ago, I'm very curious to see how commercial real estate does coming back out of this, especially like office buildings and things like that. If they're going to start just naturally installing and having IoT solutions as part of the building to help ensure safety so that companies will not be worried about the safety of, the health of their individuals if, when decide going back from being remote only or remote first type companies and getting back into office buildings. I'm curious to see how that goes.
I think so too. I feel like workspace management is getting some traction, but it's still a little bit slow, especially because with people not being vaccinated, not having that herd immunity, is still impacting how much people you can have in an office.
Absolutely. Well, this conversation has been fantastic. We haven't really talked and covered Massive IoT in this way yet. So I really appreciate your time. I did want to ask the last question as we wrap up. Are there any kind of new and exciting things coming out of UnaBiz in the coming weeks or months that we should be on the lookout for? And if anybody has questions, how can they best reach out to follow up?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things we're super excited about has been one of the features we have in our UniConnect. It's our IoT Middleware platform, which is to be able to provide you a globally sourced geolocation tracking, specifically if you have Wi-Fi based trackers. So what gives you an advantage is, unlike GPS trackers, which are super power hungry, Wi-Fi gives you that flexibility when it comes to battery consumption, but you need to have that data to be enriched to give you more accuracy. And this is something which we're tackling and solving with our UniConnect platform. And we're specifically throwing more features coming up this new quarters for the asset management. And also we have some for the utility management. If you do want to reach us out, please follow us. You can go to our website at UnaBiz.com. And you can also follow us at UnaBiz on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Fantastic. Well, Yadia, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time to kind of chat about this. Sounds like you all have a lot of great and exciting things going on. Hopefully you guys start to come out of the pandemic more than we, than that kind of get up to where we are hopefully soon. I know you're excited about that. And it sounds like, the deployments you have and the momentum you have going on is fantastic. So congrats on all the success you all are having. And we look forward to hopefully staying in touch and continuing to see how things roll out.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Hopefully, let's stay in touch and we'll keep you updated with any other massive deals that we have.
Sounds good.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us this week on the IoT For All podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave us a rating or review and be sure to subscribe to our podcast on whichever platform you're listening to us on. Also, if you have a guest you'd like to see on the show, please drop us a note at ryan@iotforall.com and we'll do everything we can to get them as a featured guest. Other than that, thanks again for listening and we'll see you next time.